for Asian kids, it's like the one thing we all struggle with. One second we hate our parents because they do all sorts of up shit, and then the next second you're like, my parents love me.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? The unconditional love that your parents give you, even though they are crazy at times and like they put you through so much stress, but you still love them.
Hey guys, welcome back to At Liminal Period. It's your girl, Chun-Li Shoddy. I've spoken about filial piety many times on my community tab and why I think it's a missing component within Western culture, but today I wanted to talk about some of the downside with filial piety. Okay, and if you guys aren't familiar, filial piety is essentially the love and respect that one has towards their parents, their ancestors, and elders. And typically this love and respect tend to manifest itself in duties and responsibilities, and not just being concerning of oneself, but taking care of the entire family. Okay, so it builds a sense of community, family, oneness, but at the same time, it does also create a lot of pressure. And I think this is most present within first generation immigrants. Without further ado, let's get into it.
First generation, you'll get it. No matter how successful you think you are, it's not good enough. In the sense that there's this unspoken pressure that at some point we're going to have to support our parents. They don't have a retirement fund, and it's not their fault. I don't want to use the word indebted, but I feel like I'm indebted to my mom for all the opportunities and all the sacrifices that she made in order for me and my brothers to have a better life. Even though I make six figures, it's not enough. If you're making under $150,000, that is not enough to live, let alone support someone's entire retirement. In addition to that, I'd love to spoil my mom and take her on vacations, but I can't realistically do that right now. It almost feels like I can't enjoy my life to the fullest capacity because I have this fear in the back of my head that if I don't save, if I'm not smart about my finances, who's going to take care of my mom? This is not even factoring like if you had a family, if you were married, if you had other responsibilities. How are you supposed to do it all? I've become accustomed to this pressure, but like realistically, it eats away at you. And the ones that know that no matter how successful you think you are, you're not doing enough.
Yeah, so I can completely relate to what she has to say, and I am 100% certain that if I was to send this video to my sister or any of my girlfriends, they'd be able to relate. And it's not just with girls, but I feel like with us, we tend to overthink and we tend to overanalyze. And sometimes like I wonder, is that just a female nature thing, or is it because again, we have this amount of pressure on our shoulders that we really don't know how to navigate. With being a first generation immigrant, you probably don't know how to balance the Eastern tradition as well as the Western culture. The expectation and norms of both society pulling at you. Okay, on one hand, you have duty and responsibility towards your parents, towards your family, taking care of everyone. Again, as she mentioned, our parents made so many sacrifices for us. Okay, most of the Vietnamese immigrant parents that you find here in America busted their ass to get their kids the best education, made sure that their kids were focused on academia, okay, made sure that they were getting into top schools because this was their opportunity at making it. You know what I mean? But at the same time, within the West, you have this individualistic, this selfish, this consumerism mentality. And again, I'm saying all of this from experience, okay? I'm guilty of it all. So I can completely relate to what she has to say. As I mentioned in previous video, back in 1976, Vietnam was officially the poorest country in the entire world, okay? So that was only 50 years ago. So not too long ago, we were super poor, and you have this opportunity to come to America, the land of the free, home of the brave. You have this opportunity to chase that American dream. And for many of them, the ones that weren't able to achieve that, at least they were able to make enough sacrifices so that their children could have that opportunity to achieve success. Okay, and that's why there's this pressure. Okay, and I mean, it's a very unfortunate situation because as you can tell, the amount of pressure that she feels, and honestly, I don't know if she's even considered this or thought about it, because as a woman that is 31, I think about this, but not only do I have this duty and responsibility to take care of my mom, but I expect that from my future partner, okay? Like, I'm just gonna be honest, like that is not something that I'm gonna be able to bend and waver on. So it's very important for people when they're dating to find people that match them in family values.
Yes, your parents have sacrificed so much so you can have a better life here. But what they don't understand is that coming from an Asian culture and being born in a first world country, you being born is already going to have conflict because you start to have Western ideas and individualistic tendencies. But coming from a minority, an Asian culture, where it's much more on collectivism and being in a household, that is why there's so much conflict. That is why, hey, when you're 18, Johnny or Mary, gets kicked out of the house, gets, their own sense of independence where their parents don't support them. But when you're 18, your parents are like, stay with us, go to school, be a doctor, take care of us, take care of your brother, take care of your sister. So even from that dynamic, there is already going to be conflict. And it's up to our generation of being like, how do we mend that path? How do we mend the Asian cultures and values that we have along with the Western culture of happiness, individualism, being able to talk about your mental health, right? That is the constant struggle.
You know what's crazy? It's that story he had about how when Johnny and whoever turn 17, 18, they get kicked out. Like, that's something that I've heard my mom tell me. It's like, you're low key. Like, I don't even know if they mean to instill this guilt within you, but there is a sense of guilt that is felt by the child when you're constantly being told that you should be grateful for this because this is not what's normal and not what's standard within Western society. And again, it isn't normal. Okay, like I knew plenty of kids that as soon as they turned 18, their parents told them that they had to start paying rent or that they had to go get a job and had to start contributing. Whereas I had a lot of friends that were first generation immigrants that were allowed to continue to live within their family home rent free so that they can focus on their studies, so that they didn't have to get a part-time job. And even after they graduated, they were allowed to continue to live in the family home once again so that they can save up for their down payment. So I do believe that there are a lot of sacrifices that Asian parents take on, or I would just say immigrant parents take on in order to afford us with this opportunity. I don't know when they tell you these things, is it meant to make you feel guilty? Is it meant to motivate you? Because I think it can be all, you know what I mean? Like maybe they're trying to motivate you through guilting you. I don't know. Like there are people that guilt trip. I just don't know if it's intentional.
So let's get into it. Now, I've got a list of different not so subtle Asian traits, or there might be some subtle stuff in between. And I just want to get everyone's reactions and, what you guys think and whether or not actually your parents do this as well, okay? Your children are your retirement plan. Make sure to mention this as often as possible once they start their careers and have an income. Does that happen with you?
Yes.
That's why I asked you first.
100%. They also, what was it? Oh shit, I lost my train of thought. What was it? What else did they say? They say something. Oh yes.
They say something.
Yes. Yes. Now I remember now. They also have to remind you how much it costs to bring you up as a kid as well.
Oh, they give you the
They've
guilt
got
of
dollar.
like how expensive it is to raise you.
Yeah, so therefore, like, you have to look after us when we're older. That's how it works.
How do you respond?
Me? Well, now I say to them, I'm 34 years old. I've been paying you since I was 17. So technically, I've paid you half of my life. So I've paid you back for everything that you've done for me right now.
And doesn't it sound crazy that he's using the term pay? Because again, like I mentioned to you guys earlier, that literal translation of it in Vietnamese is a debt.
If I'm looking after you, don't use that excuse of me anymore because I've looked after you like more than.
So you've got
looked
a
after
dollar
me.
figure in mind?
No, it's not the dollar figure. It's
Yeah.
more like they. I didn't pay for anything since since 1 to 17, but I did when I was 17 years old, and I now I look after them, so they can't use that excuse anymore because I looked after them the same amount of years.
For more
that
than
they
half.
Yeah, now it's more. So,
Wow.
don't know what I say. But when I said that to them, yeah, they weren't happy.
What did they say?
They basically went like, I forget the Asian, the Chinese terms they use, but they basically said, as a son, like, you need to look after your parents.
duty.
Yeah, it's your duty, and you can't say things like that. It's not about like how long, or how much, even though like, all those years, that's what they did. They said how long and how much they.
It's a lifelong responsibility, guys. You cannot put a dollar amount and you cannot put a term limit. It's a lifetime.
Went on me and said, a bit hypocritical, but I was only joking,
But they weren't.
Yeah, they got serious after that.
Did your parents?
Yes, so I'm the oldest daughter for context, and I have 2 siblings underneath me. My dad is already like pushing for it, and I've always been raised like that. Like, it's always when we get older, make sure you buy a house and we can all live together, or when we get older, make sure that you look after us, don't forget about us, all of those conversations.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, yeah, we'll go back to it.
I mean, for me though,
You know?
like I didn't have that pressure, but I also feel it now though, as I'm older and as my mum's getting
Even
older.
though she hasn't said it.
Even though she hasn't said it, because I'm like, she doesn't have anyone else.
The unspoken rule. Even though she doesn't have anyone else, for most of us, the option is never going to be a senior living home or for her to fend for herself. No.
And so I feel obligated, but I don't feel the guilt, or I don't feel like it's it's not my responsibility. I feel like I want to do it. I haven't been pressured into it, but I want to, because she's also sacrificed a lot for me.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just want to end off this video with the last clip that actually was the one that got me started looking into, some of this internal conflict. Because the thing is, to be quite honest, like, I've tried to do as much research as I can online. I've tried to look into counselors or family behavioral therapists or a family psychologist, psychiatrist, things of that nature, to just try and bridge an understanding, you know what I mean, with my mom and us. As I mentioned to you guys, my dad did pass away a couple of years back, so it is just my mom, and she is a very independent woman. She is a very strong-willed woman, but at the same time, she has a lot of Eastern traditions and expectations, and just trying to understand it more and come to a compromise or come to an understanding with her has been a challenge over the years. And quite frankly, there's just not any Vietnamese speaking therapists or family counselors that I've been able to find. And I've looked into BetterHelp, I've looked up on ZocDoc. There was only one therapist I was able to find that spoke Vietnamese. And the thing is, it's very important for the counselor and the therapist to actually be able to understand and relate to the culture, so that they're not coming from a position of just criticizing it. I don't want that to be misinterpreted as you're looking for someone to agree with you, but again, just they need to understand the context of the conversation. Because if you were to introduce an American therapist into the dynamic, they're going to think that you have controlling parents. They're going to say that, your parents are narcissists. Like, there is just so many different terminologies and toxic traits that people can tie to some of these, I guess, Eastern traditions. But anyways, I know I'm making it a lot more confusing, but you guys are going to see an emotional clip from these guys here, because this conversation did get very touchy. But anyways, I'm going to end off the video here, but I've enjoyed today's conversation. I hope you guys did too, and I look forward to speaking with you guys next time. Bye.
For Asian kids, it's like the one thing we all struggle with. One second we hate our parents because they do all sorts of up shit, and then the next second you're like, my parents love me.
Yeah. It's crazy, right? The unconditional love that your parents give you, even though they are crazy at times and like they put you through so much stress, but you still love them.
No parents are perfect though. Like, there wasn't a manual on how to do this right. The other thing to remember is also that like our parents also had a lot of trauma with the way they were raised in much harsher conditions. A lot of them from backgrounds with war, and
We often forget that our parents are living life for the first time as well.
I was just thinking about this, unpacking this right now. It's like how hard it is right now for myself as a dad. Am I doing enough as a dad? Am I spending enough time with Hudson? We're all just figuring it out, and like we make mistakes as well.
I think it's also good to remember that our parents are people too. Their whole sole responsibility isn't to take care of us in perpetuity, right? They need their own time to explore their passions and have time for themselves too.
I think for